I still remember the sound of his voice, calm, steady, yet sharp enough to slice through whatever little confidence I had left. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" He said it so casually, as if it was just another sentence, as if it didn't echo inside me for years after. I was 8 the first time he said it. We were sitting at the dinner table, my father, my mother, my brother, and me. The room smelled of jasmine rice and quiet disappointment. My brother had just come home with another award, a golden badge pinned proudly to his shirt. Everyone smiled. Everyone except me. I didn't hate him. I just hated the way the air changed whenever he entered the room, as if the world tilted slightly in his favor. And when my father looked at me, it wasn't anger in his eyes. It was something colder. Disappointment, maybe. He said that line again. "Why can't you be more like him?" That night, I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. I tried to imagine what it felt like to be the good son, the one who made everyone proud, the one who didn't always fall short. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't see myself in that picture. All I could see was the shadow of my brother, taller, brighter, and always one step ahead. Back then, I didn't realize how much power a single sentence could have, how it could stay with you, quietly rewriting the story of who you think you are. Every time he said it, something inside me cracked, just a little at first, until it became the only sound I could hear. As the years passed, that sentence became the background music of my childhood. It was there during breakfast, when my father read the newspaper and barely looked up. It was there when my report card landed on the table. Average, ordinary, never enough. And always there was the comparison. A quiet, consistent reminder that no matter what I did, I was still the other son. My brother wasn't cruel. He didn't mean to cast a shadow so large that it swallowed me whole. He was just good at everything. Sports, school, friends. He made it look effortless, and the world seemed to reward him for it. Sometimes I'd watch him play basketball in the yard. Our father would stand by the fence, arms crossed, smiling proudly every time the ball hit the net. When I tried, the ball barely touched the rim, and the smile disappeared. It's strange how a single look can tell you everything you need to know. You start to understand that love, at least in this house, was conditional. I learned early that approval was something to be earned, not given. So I tried harder. I studied until my eyes hurt. I joined clubs I didn't care about. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny, all to chase a smile that rarely came. And every time I failed, I told myself I just wasn't enough. But the truth is, I wasn't living for me. I was living to prove that I deserved to exist in the same family photo. And when you live that way for too long, you forget what your own voice sounds like. You start to disappear, one quiet compromise at a time. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of quiet morning that pretends to be peaceful. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen. My brother sat across from me reading a college acceptance letter. Our father stood behind him, hand on his shoulder, pride glowing like sunlight through the window. When he turned to me, that light vanished. "What about you?" he asked, his voice colder than the coffee on the table. I didn't answer. I didn't have anything to show him. He sighed. That long, disappointed sound that had become his way of speaking to me. "You're 18 now. When are you going to start taking life seriously?" I felt something tighten in my chest. All those years of quiet swallowing, of pretending it didn't hurt, they came rushing up all at once. "I am trying," I said, my voice shaking. "You just don't see it." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. Not the kind of laugh that comes from humor, but from disbelief. "Trying," he said. "You think trying means anything if you have nothing to show for it? Look at your brother. He doesn't make excuses." That was the moment. The moment something inside me finally cracked open. "I'm not him," I shouted. The words came out louder than I expected, sharp and trembling. "I'll never be him, and maybe I don't want to be." The room went silent. Even my brother froze. My father's face hardened, not with anger, but with something worse. Pity. He didn't yell. He just said quietly, "You'll understand one day. Until then, keep dreaming." Then he walked away. Just like that. As if my pain was nothing more than noise. That was the day I realized I could scream all I wanted and he still wouldn't hear me. Because in his story, there was only room for one son worth listening to. After that day, the house never sounded the same again. The silence between us wasn't empty, it was heavy. Like a fog that refused to lift. He stopped asking questions. I stopped trying to answer. We spoke only when we had to. And even then, our words were cold, functional, stripped of warmth. Dinner became a quiet performance. He would compliment my brother's stories about college life, the grades, the friends, the endless praise that filled the room like static. And me? I was just there, a background character in a story I didn't belong to anymore. I started spending more time outside. At first, just small escapes. A walk to the corner store, sitting by the river, staying at the library until it closed. But soon, the idea of coming home felt like punishment. Every wall in that house whispered the same reminder: you are not enough. One night, I overheard my parents talking in their room. My mother's voice was soft, pleading. "He's trying, you know. He just needs time." My father sighed. "Time doesn't change what a person is." That sentence hit harder than any slap could. I remember standing there in the dark hallway, frozen, realizing that he had already made up his mind about me, that in his eyes, I was a disappointment carved in stone. After that, something inside me began to fade. I laughed less, slept less. Even my brother noticed. He tried to talk to me once, told me to just ignore it, that Dad didn't mean half of what he said. But he didn't understand. It wasn't about the words anymore. It was about everything they had built between us. A wall I could no longer climb. And that's when I started planning to leave. Not out of anger, not even rebellion. I just wanted to breathe somewhere that didn't constantly remind me of what I wasn't. I didn't plan it like some big, dramatic escape. It wasn't a midnight run or a slammed door. It was quieter than that, almost gentle, like slipping out of a dream you no longer belonged in. I packed my bag one morning before dawn. The air was cold, the kind that bites softly at your skin and wakes you up from whatever illusions you've been holding on to. I looked around my room, the trophies I never won, the books I never finished, the walls that had memorized my silence. I wasn't angry anymore, just empty, like every emotion had already been spent, burned out long before this moment. My brother was still asleep. For a second, I thought about leaving a note, but what could I possibly say? That I loved him but couldn't stay in a place that kept reminding me I was less? That I wanted to find myself before I became someone I couldn't stand? In the end, I just whispered, "Take care of them," and closed the door quietly behind me. The world outside felt enormous, too bright, too alive. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have a plan. All I knew was that I needed distance, not just from him, but from the version of myself that only existed in his shadow. For a while, freedom tasted like guilt. Every train ride, every street light, every silent night in a cheap apartment, it all carried the echo of his voice. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" It took years for that echo to fade. And even then, sometimes it found its way back in moments of failure and the quiet before sleep. But there was something different now, something softer, because away from him, I was finally starting to hear another voice, my own. The first few years on my own were not what I imagined. Freedom didn't feel like freedom at all. It felt like falling. There were nights I slept on couches that weren't mine. Mornings I woke up not knowing which version of myself I had to be that day. I worked odd jobs, coffee shops, delivery, anything that kept me moving. But no matter where I went, there was always a quiet voice that followed. Not my father's this time, my own, asking whether I'd made a mistake. Some nights I'd see families walking together, laughing, easy, unguarded, and something inside me would ache, deep and wordless. It wasn't jealousy. It was a longing for something I'd never really had, a kind of love that didn't need proof. I tried to call home once. My mother answered. Her voice cracked when she heard mine. She didn't ask where I was, didn't scold me. She just said, "Are you eating well?" And for a second, I almost broke. But then I heard him in the background asking who was on the phone, and I froze. I hung up before she could answer. After that, I didn't try again. Instead, I buried myself in the noise of the world. Work, people, nights that blurred into mornings. On the outside, I was surviving. Inside, I was still that boy at the dinner table, waiting for someone to say you're enough. Years passed. The anger faded first, then the sadness. What remained was something quieter, a kind of acceptance that hurt less, but never fully healed. Sometimes when I looked in the mirror, I caught a glimpse of him, not my father as he was, but as I remembered him. And for the first time, I didn't look away, because maybe running wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was just the space I needed to finally understand him. and myself. It had been almost 10 years since I left. 10 years since that quiet morning when I closed the door without saying goodbye. In those years, life had softened me, not with comfort, but with lessons. I learned that forgiveness doesn't always start with others. Sometimes it begins when you stop hating yourself. When I finally went back, it wasn't planned. I was driving through my hometown for work, and before I knew it, I was standing outside that old house. The same peeling paint, the same tired garden, the same silence. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from memory. I hesitated at the gate, wondering if they'd even recognize me. Then the door opened. It was my brother. He froze for a moment, and then he smiled. Not the polite kind, not the awkward kind. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen since we were kids. Without a word, he stepped aside and let me in. The house smelled the same, jasmine rice and thyme. My mother was in the kitchen. When she saw me, the plate she was holding almost slipped from her hands. She didn't speak either. She just walked over and pulled me into her arms. And for the first time in years, I let someone hold me without pulling away. Then I saw him, my father, sitting in the same chair by the window, older, smaller, his hair gray, his posture bent, but the eyes were still the same. He looked at me for a long time. I waited for that familiar disappointment, that quiet judgment, but it didn't come. Instead, he just said, softly, "You've grown." I wanted to say so many things. The years of pain, the words I swallowed, the nights I hated him, but all that came out was, "Yeah, I guess I did." He nodded slowly, his eyes glassy with something I had never seen before, regret. For a long while, we just sat there, the silence between us no longer heavy, just full. And in that silence, something shifted. Maybe it wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was peace. Fragile, unfamiliar, but real. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure in a single moment. It comes quietly, in small breaths, in a nod from someone who once couldn't see you, in the calm you feel when you realize you no longer need to prove anything. After that day, I didn't stay long. We talked a little about the weather, about my work, about nothing important. And yet, it felt like everything. There were no apologies, no grand gestures, just a quiet understanding that maybe we'd both done our best with what we had. Driving away, I looked at the house one last time. The windows glowed in the evening sun, and for a second, it didn't look like the place I ran from. It looked like the place that built me. Flawed, imperfect, human. I realized then that we spend so much of our lives waiting for approval, for love, for someone to finally say, "You did good." But maybe the real healing begins when you learn to say it to yourself. I'm not that scared kid anymore. I still carry his memories, the hurt, the longing, but now they don't weigh me down. They remind me of how far I've come. And if I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be this: you were never less than enough. You were just waiting for the right time to see it. Because sometimes the love we spend our whole lives chasing is the one we learn to give ourselves.